Hey there, Washington Commanders fan. If you're a fan of this team we all love so much, stick with me till the end because today's news is going to tug at all our heartstrings. We're in week 7, and look, the Commanders' defense is going through some tough times. But is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Will the Commanders be able to make the necessary changes to turn things around? I'm going to tell you everything now. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon. Well, the Washington Commanders' defense has been the target of a lot of criticism during the season. But in recent weeks, we've even seen some improvement, right? That hope started to appear. But suddenly, it all went down the drain. In the last game against the Ravens, the defense simply crumbled. They allowed over 300 passing yards, which is totally unacceptable for a team with playoff aspirations. And to make matters worse, our monster in the middle of the defensive line, Jonathan Allen, left injured, which left everyone worried. And, my friends, the news nobody wanted to hear has been confirmed. Jonathan Allen is out for the season. Coach Dan Quinn was very clear at the press conference. He said Allen's injury was a pectoral muscle tear, which means he won't be back in 2024. Now, the big question is, how will the defense reorganize without this pillar? Quinn has already hinted that we can expect some changes in the team. He talked about the need to make roster adjustments to fill the gap Allen leaves. But the truth is that replacing a player with his talent and leadership is an almost impossible task. The situation is even more complicated when we look at the defensive depth chart. Payne is an excellent option, of course, but he's already a starter and has his role well defined. Maybe Phidarian Mathis, who's a guy with a lot of potential, will have to enter this rotation to try to hold down the fort. But is he ready to carry this weight on his shoulders? The fact is that with Allen out, we lose a lot of firepower on the defensive line, and this will directly affect the team's performance in the coming weeks. If Allen's departure wasn't enough, we still have other important losses in the defensive sector. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who had been one of the standouts, sprained his ankle in the game against the Ravens. It's still unknown how long he'll be out, but he's already listed as questionable. And as if that wasn't enough, Dorance Armstrong, our other starting defensive end, is still out due to injured ribs. In other words, what was already bad got even worse. Now, Coach Quinn and his staff will have to move a lot of pieces around to try to maintain the defense's level of competitiveness, and the first moves have already started to emerge. The Washington Commanders are bringing Carl Davis to the practice squad. Davis, who has played for teams like the Ravens, Browns, Jaguars, and Patriots, comes with an interesting background. He's not a guy who's going to change the course of the defense single-handedly, but he could be a solid addition to give more depth to the roster. Interestingly, Davis already has some familiarity with defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. from his time playing for the Dallas Cowboys. This connection could be something positive to help Davis quickly adapt to the Commanders' defensive scheme. He's a veteran player with 8 seasons in the league and can bring that experience that's sometimes lacking in decision-making moments. Another name that might pop up for the Washington Commanders is Haason Reddick, who's in a complicated situation over at the New York Jets. The guy is a sack machine, and every fan who follows the NFL knows he'd be a heavyweight addition to any defense. The Jets have given him permission to seek a trade, and it seems he's eyeing a new destination. Now imagine Reddick in the Commanders' defensive scheme, bringing that quarterback pressure we so desperately need. Reddick had 29 solo tackles and 11 sacks last season. He's the type of player who can completely transform a team's defensive sector. With Jonathan Allen's departure, Reddick's arrival would be a huge response to try to keep the defense competitive. Moreover, the Washington Commanders have a good financial situation to make this move. The team has $26 million in cap space, which gives room to absorb Reddick's contract. Now the big question remains, will the Washington Commanders enter this race for Reddick? Besides our team, others like the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions could also be destinations for the player. But with the accumulated injuries we're suffering on defense, it makes perfect sense for the Commanders to step forward and try to bring in a guy like him. And despite all the financial situation involving this possible trade, Washington has the ability to make it happen. Now, we're getting serious, but it's very interesting for us. And before we start, I'm going to ask you something right away. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon, because here we talk about the team with all the passion it deserves. And of course, leave a like to show your support. Bobby Wagner, our veteran linebacker, made a strong request after the Week 6 loss. He wants collective responsibility, and I'll tell you why this could be the turning point we've been waiting for. The game against the Baltimore Ravens, one of the best teams in the NFL right now, was tough. We can't deny that. But what impressed me was our team's attitude. The momentum was high before the game, and even with the negative result, I can't see only bad points. Sure, the defense had a terrible day, but honestly, we're not going to face a duo like Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry every week. They're players on another level, two monsters of the league. And yet, our offense showed some good things, especially with Jayden Daniels, who seems increasingly comfortable in the role of offensive leader. This kid has star potential, you can bet on that. Now, I'll be honest, one of the big shortcomings was in the ground game. Without Brian Robinson, it's hard to establish that running game that helps open up the offense so much. But even with this limitation, we could see a game plan being executed intelligently. This is something we didn't see often last year. When things didn't go as planned, the team would get lost. This time, it was different. Even with the adversities, the Commanders didn't hang their heads and fought until the end. And that, friends, is a big step forward. The loss hurt. Of course it did. But we can't fail to recognize how much this team has changed. Last year, this same group would have crumbled in a situation like this. What we saw was a team that fought until the last second. This kind of mentality is what builds a winning future. And the coaching staff needs to use this defeat as a valuable lesson. Dan Quinn has made it clear that the goal is to build something solid, and that takes time. But with this fighting spirit, we're on the right track. And that's where Bobby Wagner's speech comes in. He, who is one of the leaders of this defense, knows what it takes to become a championship team. With years of experience and a Super Bowl on his resume, the guy has the authority to speak. And what he asked for after the game was clear: collective responsibility. This means we can't be pointing fingers after a loss. Every player, every coach, the entire staff needs to look in the mirror and ask themselves, did I do my best? Because that's the only way we're going to correct the mistakes that cost us the game against the Ravens. If there's one thing Wagner learned in Seattle and is now bringing to the Commanders, it's that a team only wins when everyone plays together as a unit. It's no use having stars if the collective doesn't work. And guys, it's precisely this mentality that Dan Quinn wants to implement here. Quinn, since he arrived, has been emphasizing responsibility and unity. He knows that building a winning culture takes time, especially when we're talking about a franchise that hasn't tasted success for almost 2 decades. But he also knows he's on the right track, and, as a fan, I feel we're close to something big. Wagner wasn't discouraged by the defeat. He knows that an NFL season is a marathon, not a 100-meter dash. We're still in week 6, and we have a lot to learn and improve. The defense has the potential to be one of the best in the league, but it needs to correct basic flaws. The offense is starting to find its identity, and with Jayden Daniels becoming more confident, the sky's the limit. But for all of this to materialize, it's crucial that the team as a whole takes responsibility for the mistakes and grows from them. Quinn made a point of minimizing the importance of the result of this specific game. Sure, it was a painful loss, but it's part of the process. He said the key is to keep focus on the big picture and learn from each step. The goal isn't to win every game, but to constantly evolve so we're ready when things really matter. After all, the NFL is a league where only the mentally strong can survive. And our team, folks, is starting to show that it has that mental strength. It's also worth highlighting the confidence the team showed even after the defeat. What gives me hope is that, even with the negative result, the players didn't hang their heads. They know they faced one of the best teams in the league and managed to stay competitive. This kind of attitude is what makes the difference in the long run. It's that quiet confidence that, even with the stumbles, we're on the right track. The collective purpose, so often mentioned by Quinn and Wagner, is starting to take shape. Now I ask you, with all this mentality and with the leadership of guys like Bobby Wagner and Dan Quinn, are we finally on the right path to build something special in Washington? I really want to believe so. But the truth is that only time will tell. So, I invite you to continue following the team closely, to cheer with all your might, because the future could be bright.